I was learning how to use Zoom and everything because I was doing that like for interviews and stuff, and so I'm like getting used to it.
Yeah, Bill and I have been doing this for a minute now, so it's interesting because you get to meet people from all over the country. We did somebody who was in Dublin. So you would never talk to these people. It's just amazing. You know, at first I was poo-hooing it.
Right.
And now I'm like, it's amazing. It's an amazing tool.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm just connecting us, trying to connect us down.
Hey, don't forget to press record.
Yeah, no. I backed us up on Zoom too, in case we have another disaster like we had last week.
Uh-oh.
We had a great comic come on. It was from Colorado, and something happened with our Facebook stream, and it just wouldn't go on.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, this is pretty laid back. You know?
Good.
Well, for me anyway.
What are you drinking over there? Are you drinking lemonade, or is that vodka lemonade? What is that?
Orangina. Orangina.
Ah, okay.
With seltzer, raspberry seltzer.
Okay.
And vodka.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
A little liquid courage never hurt.
Well, that's why this show is called After Hours. We do it when we're in the studio doing this. We're pretty much straight edge. It's coffee. It's during the day.
Hang on 1 second. I'll be right back.
No worries.
Bill gets nervous. He always has to pee before we start.
Right? That's how it works.
The good check the Facebook Live thing. What that means, right? He's got to go call his son.
Right.
Oh, man. Hopefully we'll be recording this week. So you're in California?
I am. Yes, I'm in the Sacramento area.
Are you threatened by the fires? Well,
no,
you know,
thank goodness.
Let's save this for the show.
All right.
Because we're wasting it right now. But remind me of it in case I forget, because I'm very forgetful.
All right.
I want to talk about that.
Hang on, Mark. I'm just making sure we're going to the live stream. I had a problem with it.
Where's your son, man?
I just called him.
Can't we just like chip in? I'll be down to chip in, man.
Yeah, it says, should I stop the live stream and then start it over? All right, let's see what happens. Okay. See, this is where it was at before, and then it just didn't.
An error message? Or
No, just.
See if anything, you got your Windows Defender open at the bottom. So
Where? There?
check this box. Just click on Zoom. On Zoom.
Right there?
Corona.
No, because we told everyone Zoom. I mean Facebook. Putting it on Zoom now too, but. So I could go on Facebook, I mean on YouTube, but.
I have to look up the error.
Should I try to go on YouTube?
It's up to you. But I don't know what it up.
All right, Mark, let's just start going and because we're being recorded on Zoom, but it's just not going up on Facebook Live right now.
All right.
So just we'll start the show right now.
All righty, man.
Sorry, I apologize to our loyal listeners.
Our patient guests and our listeners. What's up, everybody? We're coming to you live from New York City with another episode of Police Off the Cuff After Hours. My name is Mark DeMeo. I'm your host. I'm here with my co-host, Bill Cannon, my partner in all things law enforcement. What's up, buddy?
How you doing, man? I'm sorry about these technical difficulties we've been having lately, but that's, we need engineers. We need to move up in this world, so we don't have to do this shit ourselves,
Yeah, I know. It's amazing that we even do this little bit that we do. It really, truly is. But listen, we're up, we're running, and we have a phenomenal guest today. I'm very excited to have her join us. What she's going to talk to us about is really, really interesting, and I have a lot of questions. So without further ado, what do you think, Bill? You want to introduce
No, she actually, I guess your maiden name is Salazar, right?
Yes.
And you're Brianna, and it's O'Daniel. So that's your married name?
Yes.
Okay.
Currently, I'm going through a divorce right now, so
Sorry to hear that.
I'm keeping the same last name. My kids have the same last name, so.
Oh, okay, so you got to go through life pretending you're Irish.
Yes, exactly. And I'm the farthest thing from it.
We have a lot of experience with Irish people here. I happen to be Irish, and we had the Irish angel from Dublin on the show a few weeks ago, which is a lot of fun,
Well, Brianna is a forensic clinician. She specializes in sex trafficking, and she's here to talk to us a little bit about that today. And that's another pandemic we got going on with the sex trafficking.
Yes, it is.
So what is it that you actually do? You're in California, right?
Yeah, so I'm in the Sacramento area. I have been working with sex offenders in general for the last 3 years. More specifically, I've focused on sex trafficking, the perpetrators of sex trafficking, and I've developed a curriculum in particular that I use with those guys because it's very different than our typical sex offenders that we treat. And they are required to see us once they get out on parole. At least in California, that's how that works. So they're required to do it their entire time that they're on parole. And so I took over this program of working with sex traffickers themselves and kind of focusing more on the treatment needs for them in particular, because there's a lot of other issues that we're seeing with that particular population rather than just sex offenders as a whole.
Oh, but how do you differentiate between someone who's a sex trafficker and someone who's a sexual offender?
So right now they're actually put into the exact same category, which was the issue that we were having. So like, for example, in groups and things like that we were running, we were seeing that there was this hierarchy in the group. And there was this idea of, oh, well, I don't have a victim. She was already out doing this. Things like that versus our guys that are in there for rape or child molestation or things like that. There's this idea of hiding behind that because they're scared to talk about it because of how it is in the prison system.
Right.
But our guys that are on the sex trafficking side, a lot of it has to do with status and things like that within the gangs that they're in as well. And so that's kind of what I was seeing, is that there was a lot of that going on in the groups when we had everybody mixed up.
It's funny. We have a female detective that has been on the show a couple of times. And she said that the Bloods have gotten out of the business of drugs and are now into the business of sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. Have you found that too in California?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different gangs here in the Sacramento area. A lot of them are kind of at each other's throat right now. And surprisingly, when I would have them in groups together, they would let me know when they're in rival gangs and things like that. But they were able to keep it together in the group setting, which was interesting. They kind of left that stuff out on the streets, but when they came into group, it was like they all got along well, fist bumps, things like that. But yeah, we're seeing that a lot, that there's a lot more of selling of women, kids, women, men, all different people actually. And that's a big thing that we've noticed that it's transitioned to, rather than just, selling drugs. It's normally now it's moving on to selling people.
Talking about the groups here. What is that, the groups?
So the groups that I do is basically like it's broken up. Typically, it's all sex offenders are all in the same group. It doesn't matter what their offense is.
For the meetings?
Yeah. So in California, there's other states that do this too, but there is a law where they have to, once they come out of prison, go to groups every single week for either 3 hours if they're considered high risk, which would be based off of a score that they received in prison, or an hour and a half a week that would be, again, based off a score they received in prison that would consider them non-high risk. Typically, we see our sex traffickers 99% of them are considered high risk because of their histories. And that's how they score them, is based off their criminal history, how old they were when they committed their offense, whether their victim was male or female, whether it was a child or an adult, whether it was someone they knew or didn't know. There's a lot of things that go into factors when deciding if they're high risk or not.
So you're talking about, this is a room full of pimps, basically.
Yes.
And you're supposed to heal these pimps?
What'd you say?
Do they come dressed up like that? Like in the pimp regalia?
Now that's old school.
They have the big hat with the feather up top and
Nah, that's me. I come in like that.
Nobody has shoes with the goldfish in it?
Nope.
So basically, in order to get charged with this crime, you have to be able to prove, first off, that the person that's being arrested is the one that supplied the female, and she was there obviously against her will, but also against her will, even to another level. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's basically pimping her out, but she's not even from this country usually, or maybe she's under.
Oh, actually, most of them are from this country. So a lot of them tend to be in the streets, tend to have some way of a connection sometimes with these guys in general, whether they're females that are in the gang or not, or it could be even our CSEC youth. So our children that are in, foster systems or things like that come out. And a lot of these guys, I want to use the word prey. They prey upon them because they know that they are vulnerable. They know that this is somebody that they could talk into. Hey, I'll buy you this. I'll buy you that. All you got to do is do this for me, making it feel like this is something that they can do very easily and make all of this money, and that this pimp is just going to hold the money for them. And that tends to be what we see. When we think sex trafficking, I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand too, is like a lot of people automatically assume, it's with, from another country or from another state, when it can just be from one county to the next. And it's that easy that a lot of these guys get these charges that they're moving some girl from, for example, in my area, Sacramento County to Placer County. And it can be that easy for them to do that and then get charged with a sex trafficking charge.
So that's what happens. They find them in one location and they bring them to, get them away from their family and their friends, obviously, right?
Yep.
You put them in another location and then they start pimping them out, right?
Yeah. So it could just be that there's one night where they went to a hotel in Placer County to drop the girl off, and all of a sudden they get caught up, and right there's a sex trafficking charge. It doesn't matter how many times they would have brought them over or anything. It could just be one time.
Wow. Now, do they specifically prey on certain areas like bus stations, train stations, airports? Is that where they find most of their people that they force into human trafficking or sex trafficking?
So a lot of the time, as weird as it is, it can happen as simple as going to a grocery store. A lot of them start out, and I'm sure you guys have heard of the different types of pimps. They start out as like, I'm going to smoothie this girl. I'm going to tell her she's beautiful, and I'm going to make her feel like $1 million, basically. Right. I'm going to take you to go and get your hair done and your nails done and things like that. And they can tell when the girl's feeding off of it. It's when the girls don't feed off of it that they typically turn into more aggressive with it. Yeah. And even then, like if they get a girl to come in and they're like, oh, I'm going to go get your hair done, and all of a sudden the girl's starting to pull away. Most of the time we see that these pimps will turn from a boyfriend pimp, which is exactly what I just described, to a gorilla pimp, which would be more aggressive. And that would include, beating them or, doing things like that where it would be more of an aggressive style. Pretty quickly they can change to that.
And these girls, what kind of families do they mostly come from? Because I would imagine if you had like
somebody more of an aggressive style, pretty quickly they can change to that.
And these girls, what kind of families do they mostly come from? Because I would imagine if they're
style, pretty quickly they can change to that.
And these girls, what kind of families do they mostly come from? I would imagine. Bill,
You know what happened? I'm sorry, but I was actually trying to go live on YouTube also, and
Oh, okay.
that's why that just happened. I'm sorry.
It's
We're
so
having
good.
some real technical difficulties tonight.
Hey, Bill is the Wizard of Oz over there. He's fucking things up from behind the curtain.
It may actually be going live on YouTube.
So typically the types of families and stuff that we see the victims come from can be broken families, which is something that we would think of, right? So normally it's people that are really, really wanting the attention. I think a lot of people assume like daddy issues, right? We hear that all the time. It's a lot more than just that. There's a lot of like wanting to feel loved, wanting to belong, which everybody wants, right? But if you come from somewhere where you feel like you've never gotten that, and all of a sudden this guy that's maybe attractive to you or something is showing you this love and attention you've been seeking, a lot of the time that's the type of people we see that fall for that. And this can be your typical teenage girl too, who's never had a boyfriend before, and maybe this is her first experience and her friends telling her about it. So that's kind of like, there's a lot of misconceptions around this stuff. Is like there's a lot of an idea of it's going to be these particular girls in general. The problem is a lot of our kids, they're not told about this stuff at a young age. So they don't know what to look out for. They don't know that this stuff is out there, because a lot of parents tend to kind of keep that away from them. When in actuality, this is something that should be taught at a young age, so that we can educate these young girls and boys, I want to say both, on this kind of stuff, because there's their friends that might get into it, and they may come and pull them into it too, which is what we see as well. So that's, hopefully that kind of answered your question.
You know, it's amazing. I used to teach college, and a guy came up from Myrtle Beach.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying to recruit some students from this college to join the Myrtle Beach police force. And he had, one of his parts of his speech was that how prevalent human trafficking and sex trafficking is in Myrtle Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of shocked at that. I was like, wow, this sort of little, well, it's not really a little town, but I don't know much. I mean, I used to see it in the 80s, you know, when Times Square was a sewer, and the Port Authority, the pimps would go there and just, you know, basically kidnap girls because they could spot the runaways coming in at the Port Authority. But since New York City's been cleaned up, we don't see it as much. I'm sure it still exists. We
Absolutely.
don't see it as much, you know.
Yeah, and it's not always the easiest to spot either. A lot of, and I was talking to this with one of the law enforcement officers out here recently. A lot of the times when people think pimps, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the feather in your hat, or things like that, you know, there's this idea of what they look like. And, you know, you see some of the guys that come into my office, and, you know, a lot of them are charmers, the way that they talk. They look very plain Jane in a way. There's different ways they talk to people. They don't come across as aggressive when you meet them until you don't do what they're asking. And I've even witnessed that myself, working with them in a professional setting. They're very quickly to want to fire you per se, even though they don't have that choice. But there's that idea of like, you know, they want to manipulate everything. And that includes myself also, like I said, in a professional setting. So there's that idea of, you know, there's these young girls that are impressionable when you're a teenager. And I think back when I'm a teenager, or when I was a teenager, and that idea of like,
wasn't that only about 2 or 3 years ago?
I wish. You know, that idea that you just want to fit in with everybody. And if your friends are doing it, why not? Why don't I do it too? You know? And so there's that piece of it. Oh, hey, you can make some money if you do this. Oh, cool. Then I can go and buy some new shoes or whatever. Right. You know, there's that idea of like, there's these ways that they kind of manipulate, and they pull other girls or guys into it to also help with that manipulation, and get other people involved.
Hey, do you think there's, with the sex trafficking and then Weinstein, and now, like, is this an underground culture? Like, for example, like this movie, Cuties, that's on Netflix right now. Like, are we trying to normalize this deviant behavior? Like, are we trying to come to a place where pedophilia is all of a sudden is not frowned upon anymore, and sex trafficking is not the end of the world? You know what I'm saying? If you have the money, is that what we're doing?
Well, and that's the scary thing, right? So I just recently saw that whole thing with the Cuties thing. And I know that's been a big topic with our parole department here, and some of the parolees and probation clients talking about it. The idea that, number one, they're not allowed to watch porn or watch things like that of any kind. And now there's this weird, like, you know, thing that it's getting by, because it's not necessarily porn, even though it doesn't seem right at all what's being shown in these videos and things like that on Netflix. But it's that idea of like, it's normalizing these behaviors, and we have people, you know, that are in the media and stuff, the different rap artists or R&B artists or pop artists that are normalizing these behaviors and looks that little girls, I think, idolize or they look up to. And there's these different dances, like in the video or in the Netflix show Twerking, right? There's that idea of like, this is sexy, this is something that people do. And I mean, it's hard to even fathom these little girls being filmed doing this, and then being put on live TV for everybody to watch. I think with them being so young, that's not going to be an easy thing to hear about when you're older. You know what I mean? And you actually know what was happening behind that.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to watch. You know, I'm not interested in watching it just because I don't want to be in that enraged, because I know
Right.
it's going to make me angry. And then what do I do with that?
Right.
They're already warning me, and there's nothing I can really do about it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Other than this is our platform. This is Bill and I's platform.
Yeah.
But that kind of stuff, you know, that I just want to, I want to kill somebody. You know what I'm saying? I want to just freaking. I have a daughter. She's 21,
Right.
and you know, thank God she's almost past that age where, you know, and even then, it's like I worry about her. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And you know, the sad part too, and this is kind of going away from that part of it, but sex trafficking in general in this area, a lot of my guys that I work with are like, we'll take them to Placer County because there's money in Placer County. And that's, unfortunately, that's where they're getting their money from. That's who's paying for it, is some of the older men that are here that are paying for these young girls that they wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. So they know that they can do this behind closed doors. And there's certain hotels here that literally on the front door, it says you can be searched by the police at any point. Like, that's literally what it says on the front door of the hotels. And we know where those hotels are. We know that that's happening there. And I mean, what's being done about it, you know?
Well, if it's such a huge problem, it's probably
Mhm.
so tough for the police to enforce it. I'm sure they have like
Exactly.
vice squads and stuff like
Yes.
that, but
Yeah.
if it's that big a problem, they can't go out every night and make arrests on it.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, they have major investigations, but you know, how many Jeffrey Epsteins are there across this country,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And the powerful people that are committing these crimes, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So
That one I
it's a
watched.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do work with, so I recently took on a position with being an ICI instructor. So I'm working with Human Trafficking Investigations. And that's through P.O.S.T, which in California, I don't know if they do the same thing out there, but in California, they do a program basically to train law enforcement once they're done with the academy and stuff like that on different topics. And right now, this one's on human trafficking. So I actually talk on the perpetrator side of stuff about things that I'm witnessing while I'm in treatment that maybe could help them in kind of understanding these guys better, or maybe ways to approach them, or, you know, kind of where they come from, things like that. Because those are things that I notice. Personality disorders, criminogenic needs, things like that that pop up while I'm in group with these guys. So I did start doing that recently, and I did my first training, was it last month? In August. So
I don't understand. How do you treat a pimp? I really, how do you treat a pimp from not being a pimp? I'm gonna give you anti-pimp training. How do you do that?
It's almost like being a pedophile. It's like, how do you treat somebody to not be able to take advantage of somebody and make money from it? It's a win-win, you know?
Right. So the biggest thing for me is, so originally when I first started, a lot of people were saying, oh, a male clinician needs to work with these guys. But I had told them up front, I was like, I have no fear in doing this, number one. And number two, they're going to have to deal with women out in society every single day of their life. So why are we giving them exactly what they want by working with a male when they got to learn how to deal with a female authority figure? Not only that, a lot of them don't have positive female role models in their life in general. They didn't have moms around, or maybe mom was prostituting when they were a kid sometimes, or selling drugs or things like that. So a lot of the time I utilize myself as that figure for them. And we talk a lot about trauma. We talk a lot about their history. We talk a lot about all the different things that they've been through, what led them to this point, and what they're doing and why they're doing it. So a lot of the time I do realize that people do go back to what they're used to, right? So things like selling drugs, a lot of people go back to it. Selling women, same thing. I mean, it's something that comes easy for them. So a lot of the times we talk about other ways to use that. So you're a great salesperson, right? So you obviously get people to buy your products. So how do we change that into something that's more of a positive way of doing that? I get you don't like working with people, but you obviously do this well. So what can you do instead in order to still make money and not have to look over your shoulder every single freaking day looking to see if law enforcement is following you around or if they're showing up at your hotel room or things like that. So it's a lot of that, a lot of me working hand in hand with our parole agents. So I have always been on call with them whenever needed because I like to have them come into the session sometimes.
Now,
Granted,
you go into prisons too?
No, so this is actually after prison. So when they come out of prison, this is what happens. I wish.
So this is mandated by the state as part of their probation, parole, whatever, the
Right.
parole, right?
Right, yeah. So it's sex offender treatment. It's for anybody that is a sex offender in general. It's just recently we decided to separate our sex traffickers and our pimps from the rest of the sex offenders.
That's easy. You just have the guys with the hats. You put them over in the other section.
Yes, yes. You know, it's one of those things too that as a woman working in this field, it can be really empowering too, right? So the idea that you're working with people that, number one, nobody wants to work with, right? A lot of people don't believe in this, don't believe in these guys in general, which is okay. But for me personally, I feel like just seeing just a few come out of this and actually do something good with their lives makes it worth it. I know that, you know, on my end of things, I've been a victim, not of this, but of a sex offense myself. And so having been a victim before, for me to go into this type of work, it's empowering because it feels like I could be doing work with victims, but why not go to the source of the people that are creating the victims, right? So being able to do that has been amazing, you know, and I've actually enjoyed all of it. It's been good to actually see some of these people come out of this in a positive way, and sometimes they'll come back after they're done with treatment and be like, thank you so much for everything you did, or bring me their ankle monitor chargers to give to the next guy.
You know, you would hope that you are making a difference because that means they're not going to reoffend, you know, and that's an important thing. You know, I worked a lot. I was in homicide, but on the same floor as us was Manhattan Special Victims.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I was a boss, I would go out with them sometimes in their cases, and some of their cases were fascinating, but some of them were also so heartbreaking.
Right.
And they were such good investigators because they knew how to investigate that very specific crime.
Right.
And they were great at finding out when people were lying, because there's a lot of lying going on in that. I'm sure in what you do,
right,
they try to lie to you all the time.
Absolutely. And that's the whole idea of me working with their agents too, is the idea that they're on ankle monitors. So if they tell me, no, I'm not going back to gang activity, but yet they're over in their area that they used to hang out in all the time, and we know exactly what happens in that area, then I bring it up, you know.
Do you have the transformer that you could give them a little shock into their ankle bracelet? If they
right? That would be nice, huh? Little shock collar.
It's like the dog fence. You know,
yes,
they go outside their yard.
Exactly. Exactly.
How long do you have these guys for, or these sex offenders for?
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
What's the average amount of time that you actually have, like in the group? Like, how long does somebody stay in a group? Is it a year, 2 years, 3 years? They got to come back for 5 years. 3
years is the minimum. Lifetime is the maximum.
Well, every week they got to come to these meetings.
Yep.
So you get to know them, and I'm sure, like you said, you mentioned there are positive things coming out, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
All right, good. So.
Absolutely, and that's that's the benefit of it. Is like, I have some guys where they come in, hood over their head, all their phones out in their lap, and I'm like, every single week, leave. We're not doing this, and so after a while, it's finally like, okay, I guess maybe I should start to participate because I'm going to jail every few weeks. So, there's that idea.
They need an attitude adjustment.
Exactly.
They can't come in there and they think they're going to do their street bullshit on you.
Exactly.
The inevitable question I have to ask you, and I'm sure it's, do any of your clients come on to you?
Yes. So actually, one of my first experiences with a pimp was in an intake. And this was before I even took over that part of our program. He came in and basically made a comment. His first comment to me was, "Do you know how much money I can make off you in the street?" And of course, like, in my mouth totally dropped, but at the same time, I came back very quickly without actually thinking about it, and had said, "Do you know how much money I'm making off of you?" And so that didn't go over very well, but it was just a quick response.
That's a great answer.
So I had told his parole agent, because I'm like, I felt bad afterwards, but the reality of it is like, you got to be quick-witted with these guys. And the funny thing is like, after months and months and months of working with this guy, he joked about it. You know what I mean? Of like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that to you, and the way that you came back at me with it."
You know what you should have did? You should have taken his hat.
Right, exactly.
And held it hostage.
You know what? Listen, honestly, it's a horrible thing to say. You know, you shouldn't say that. But in the back of your head, like, I'm thinking, like, how much? Like, I just started. How much? What, like,
how much could I make?
Right.
And what are you basing that on?
Never gonna.
Exactly.
How much?
Exactly. So,
do you have a deferred comp plan? 401k?
Right. Exactly.
This is what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the guy that you got to go straight, and he's fine. He's got a job. Everything's together, and then he gets that first paycheck, and he's looking at the taxes that came out, and he's like, "What the fuck is this?" And then he's like, "Yo," he's telling everybody, "You know how much I used to make on the street?"
Yep.
One hoe, take this whole damn check.
Yes.
It's worth the work right here.
And I used to love all the language from the street, like with the pimp. "You're out of pocket," or on the track, right?
Yep.
Or they're supposedly the prostitutes, or they're not supposed to look into the pimp's eyes, right?
Yep.
Aren't there all these rules?
Yes, that is the reality of it. And, you know, there's a lot of times where they use the terms in my group, or they were using them in my groups, I should say, because I don't anymore. But the idea of using like bitch or hoe related to a woman, right? So we had to have conversations about that of like, hey, you know, when you're in my room and you're talking about a woman, you're going to use her name, right? And also the other thing that we started working on is, because they would all kind of gang up together and they would talk like, "Oh, well, we're just a bunch of guys and we can just talk about this stuff." I'm like, no, you're going to look at me and talk then. Because if you can't be respectful because you're with a bunch of your guys, then I'm like, you're not going to look at them. You're going to look at me when you're doing your check-ins or things like that, which did work.
So you have group sessions with these guys?
Yeah, it's 9 at a time.
Oh my God! You should have a 9mm at each one. 9 guys in a group?
Yes.
Is there people? Obviously, what law authorities in there? Is there a sheriff in there with you?
There's nobody.
So they come to this like, but they're out though. They're out. They're civilians at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're on ankle monitor. We have obviously emergency panic buttons, things like that. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing though, like on my end, and I can say, knocking on wood, I have never felt unsafe because of the rapport building that I really work hard on with them. And that's been something that's been really beneficial. And I have noticed, like, I was actually pregnant my entire pregnancy there. The guys would basically back me up on anything that came up. So if a new guy was coming into group and he started making comments to me, the other guys would check him on it, which is what I loved, because it's like, okay, we've gotten to this point where they actually back me on things. So it's not like
they had respect for you, and they wanted to make sure everyone else had respect for you.
Exactly. And they know that one person can ruin the entire group. So they didn't want to risk that because group was going so well for them.
Yeah.
Hey, but suppose you come across somebody like that's in your group. He's not really like a pimp. He's more like let's say Tom Cruise in Risky Business, that, you know, he was actually stealing them from the bad pimp, and then he was just gonna get them honest work.
Right? That's exactly how it works.
It's all like Julia Roberts and Pretty Woman. I mean, come on, shit is.
Think about like, you're talking about cuties now, right? And now we're talking about Hollywood. I'm thinking about that other movie where the guy turns out to rap. He starts rapping. I love that movie, by the way. Hustle and Flow.
Oh, yeah.
Who's the main guy in there? What was that guy's name?
I can't remember who it was. That was
anyway, but, you know, like, he was a pimp, but he was nice to them most of the time.
Mm-hmm. And that's how it can happen to start out, right? But then a lot of other things.
Don't they call him daddy? That's my daddy.
Right.
That's
Yes.
if you look at Hollywood, that's like they're constantly pushing this thing in our face, like, oh, it's not that bad. If you have like a nice pimp, you know, this guy was nice, and plus he became a rapper and he put them down.
Right.
You know, like you said, Pretty Woman.
Mhm.
They used to have that in the 80s in Manhattan on the West Side.
Mhm.
There were literally like hundreds of prostitutes walking the street.
Yeah.
Pimps they were like a radio car watching their girls, you know.
Yep.
And it was incredible. I mean, it's all cleaned up. It's probably going to go back to that eventually because
Right.
of who they have in power right now. But
I don't know if it'll go back in the street because most of the stuff is online now.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
you get streetwalkers, but back in the day, like Bill said, man,
We still have a bunch here. We still have a bunch here.
That walk the street.
Mm-hmm.
That's the track, right? That's what the word
Yep.
is. I'm going to the track.
Yes. And, you know, one of our law enforcement officers actually in Oakland, when I was down there, she actually went out on the street and posed as one, obviously with a gun on her hip and police to back her up around the corner. But just to kind of try and figure out like who's who, what are people doing out there, things like that. And she said seeing across the street a 10-year-old little girl, you know, doing the same thing, minus the gun on her hip. And she's terrified, even though she has a gun on her hip, you know, she's like, just watching this is just, it was something else, you know, and it's sad to see that the little girls get
They used
involved.
to do that on the NYPD. They call it Operation Losing Proposition. And they would have the girls from the precinct pose as prostitutes. And
Yep.
and then sometimes in Roosevelt Avenue where you had the trans over there, the male cops used to dress up. And I remember one night I was in the task force and we're driving around and we go by because you know you're patrolling, there's nothing to do, so why don't we go check out? Back then it used to like the Hishis, we used to drive by there all the time. And now you see these two Irish guys with beer bellies. Like the only thing that they wore a skirt with their dress shoes. I mean, you know, their uniform shoes.
Right.
And then they had the belly, and then like they had a mustache and a beard and a wig. Like, you know, remember the big fat cop mustaches back then, but with a wig on too. And you know how many guys pulled over? How many cars?
God. I'd be his pimp. I'd be like, you know how much money I can make you?
Right, exactly.
Drive by, and we'd laughing so hard that they'd go over the radio. Central, we have an operation going on here. Can you tell everybody to stay away from these 2 blocks where they were trying to get the Johns who were picking up these the transvestites. And the way these guys looked, man, I was like, unbelievable. I can't believe cars pull over for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not attractive at all. But there was some really attractive ones over there. They used to have a contest because that was all Latin over there, Colombian and Ecuadorian. And they used to have a contest over there, and whoever won that was probably like the best one in the country. Beautiful, man. You can never tell. You can never ever tell. Trust me, I got fooled a couple times.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you ever ran into Mark in any of these sex trafficking places.
Oh, haven't done that yet.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't want to fly to Sacramento.
Right, exactly.
But,
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice.
Right.
What's the most challenging part of your job?
There's a lot of challenging parts of it. I think the idea that, so I'll kind of like backtrack a little bit. For when people get their masters and stuff in social work or things like that, because I'm a social worker. So when they get that, you don't learn how to work with mandated clients. And mandated clients are a whole other challenge. Right. I like it because I like the challenge. I like the idea that, you know, you're having to work to engage these people and it makes you get creative. So I feel like it really makes you a better professional, whereas you have people that, you know, you could take that are just willing to come in and, you know, I have suicidal ideation, or, you know, I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, or things like that. You have these guys that do not want to be there and, you know, are going to go and run most of the time, or, you know, they're just going to sit there. There's many times where I've just sat there for 50 minutes with a client and an individual because they don't want to talk.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, I'm getting paid for this time, so you're still going to sit here and I'll just do my notes then. Because, I mean, what do you do at that point, right? If you don't want to engage, I'm not going to force you.
Right.
So I would say that happens sometimes, especially in the start of treatment for them.
Throw on Goodwill Hunting, and then you both sit there and watch
Right?
Matt Damon and Robin Williams not talk to each other. That would be hysterical if you did that.
Yes.
If you had it queued up just to that part, and
Right.
everybody just sat there and talked, here, I got something for you, and you just put that on and you both watch that. That'd be great. I guarantee you that would break the ice.
Exactly.
It's hysterical.
Exactly.
If they don't fulfill their reporting mandate, will they violate them and put them back in prison?
So technically they go back to jail, not prison. If they go to prison, it's because of other reasons. It's obviously more felony type stuff where they would go back to
So
prison.
these guys are in jail. So this is somewhat, this would be more like probation then.
So no, so they come out of prison. Some of them do. So there's two different sections. So we have probation level and then we have parole. Parole tends to be, our pimps are mostly all on parole, our pimps and traffickers.
Right.
So they come out of prison, they come to us the entire time of their parole. Now it's kind of like, it feels like it's a lot harder for people to go back to prison unless it's something more extreme. So if they're not showing up to treatment, it's going to be more of a jail thing. So they go to jail for a few months or whatever. And that's the same thing. Like they can miss like one here and there, I think is kind of like there's a little bit of wiggle room with that. Like let's say they have a job interview or something like that during their group time. It happens. But it's when they're consistently not attending that they tend to get thrown in jail for a little timeout for a little bit.
We got a plane coming in from Ecuador. I have to miss that meeting.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
You know what? Do you have a plan to put something together for parents? I think parents need to hear this. I think it's a message that needs to be put to, so the parents can tell their kids what to look out for. Maybe they can watch it together. Even if you just did something on YouTube, your own channel, and you just, I'm telling you, man, this is important stuff for parents.
Yeah, and I actually have two kids of my own too. I have a little boy and a little girl. I have a almost 1-year-old. In 2 weeks he'll be 1, and then I have an almost 4-year-old little girl that will be 4 in November. So, having 2 little kids is obviously a big reason why I do what I do. I think having the insight that I have, not a lot of people get, because they don't work in this field, particularly with sex traffickers. And I don't really know anybody in California that works particularly just with these guys. So, having that insight, it's been helpful for friends, things like that. But yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't even think about that side of it. I know that they do, what is it called? There's like a sexual assault prevention education type of thing that they do in the schools. I did that for a while, but they didn't really ever like specify with, sex trafficking or things like that, human trafficking in general. But I think it would be good, especially right now with everything being online and, we're noticing a lot of people are getting victims through that.
You just mentioned everything being online. Okay, so we know about the street and we know about going to the grocery store, this, that, and the other.
Right.
But imagine that it's even possible for somebody to pimp somebody out that they met online.
Right. And that includes like a lot of these teenagers don't know, but like Snapchat is a good one, right? So like we think our pictures end after 10 seconds. That's your max time you can add on there. But, there's a lot of times where people are taking these pictures and they're using them on the internet. And this is just in general, it's not just for sex trafficking, but there's times where people have used those on the internet for child pornography or things like that. And that's something that I've had to teach kids about too, is you're sending your boyfriend a nude picture of yourself. That's already distribution of child porn, right? So, and they're not getting that. A lot of teenagers don't get that. So when I was teaching that stuff in the schools, it was kind of like, oh my God, wait, what? I can get in trouble for this. But it's true, and now your boyfriend has this child porn on his phone.
That's why you stop doing that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? Also, too, that's the way that I remember when I was in the squad. I had a couple of cases like that where, somebody claimed that they had your nude pictures, and if you didn't send the money, they were going to put it out or something like that. And there was a couple of girls that got scammed.
Yeah.
I worked in the precinct I worked in. We had like 5 colleges in there.
Right.
That was a big thing. Girls would come in and it'd be like, oh, I got this email from somebody that claims they have a picture of me and they're going to release it if I don't give them so much money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's so many sexual deviants out there.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think the parents really need to know about the sex trafficking and how that happens, as far as just trying to fit into a clique for a girl. She thinks she might be a gang member, a gang banger,
Right.
but in reality, she's going to be part of the gang, but she's not going to be a gang banger. She's going to be the one they gang bang.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
See, I just came up with that right now. That's pretty good. You can use that.
Right.
You thought you were going to be a gang banger, but instead you got gang banged. That's true. You can use that. Take that. It's
Yeah. All right. I'll take
Sounds
it.
like you got it from a rap tune or something.
No, but it's true because a lot of these girls think that they may get down with the clique and they may get down and be part of, and then all of a sudden they're getting turned out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's for a party, and then the next thing you know, so-and-so, and we're making money, Ma, why are you doing this?
Right.
Look at how much.
No, a lot of the time, not only the pimps, but the girls that are being pimped out, they all get addicted to that money. And the lifestyle that comes with that. So knowing that my pimp is going to pay for me to get my nails done every single week because I never had that before, or get my hair done every single week, or whatever it is, there's all these things that come with it. And so they think that that's a lifestyle. Like that's, there's this idea that I feel like I can do things I've never been able to do before.
I think they also bring drugs into the equation, I'm sure,
Yes.
as you know.
Yep.
Good way to control people. I want to ask you, have you ever run into one of your clients outside the work area?
I have, but more so like he didn't see me, I saw him. I was at a restaurant and he was on the corner with some girl. So I had seen that before, but other than that, that's the only time that I ran into one. I actually live in a different county.
Right, that could be pretty weird or pretty, right?
Yeah, so my thing is, and I always tell my clients this, like when you guys are out in public and let's say we run into each other, which isn't common because I live in a different county than a lot of them do. So I'm like, if I see you in public or something, or you see me, just keep walking. I'm like, don't take offense to it. I'm not going to take offense to it. You don't need to know any of my family or friends, and I don't need to know any of yours. They don't need to know if you're on parole or not, or you come to me for therapy or not. It doesn't matter. So I didn't ever have that issue. There was just a few times where like I had seen somebody or something like that, not necessarily our pimps, but some of our other clients. And it just kind of was like a walk past type of thing. There was no stopping, no nothing.
Right. So yeah. They call you Miss O'Daniel or Mrs. O'Daniel?
They just call me Bree.
Oh, they call you Bree. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you about this because this is interesting to me too. The fact that this sugar daddy culture is very popular amongst the young girls, and also that other thing, OnlyFans. So you're getting these young girls, they're watching, they think that other girls are making so much money on, on the internet and stuff like that, on Instagram, and I don't know where else they go. I'm too old for that shit, but I know they do it on Instagram. But the sugar daddy thing.
There's no MySpace around anymore, just so you know.
Yeah.
We still have AOL for emails.
The sugar daddy.
It's fine.
You're fighting against the tidal wave right now because at the same time you're fighting against reality, you also have all these other forces, kind of sort of minimalizing it. It's no big deal. I got a sugar daddy. He pays for everything. How many sugar daddies do you have? That's another show that's on Netflix, by the way. I was watching it. It's about girls that they have more than one guy paying for more than one thing. One guy pays for my electric. Other guy pays for my hair to get done. This guy pays for my apartment. Right. And they gotta coming in like a wave. They gotta know when this.
That's called a hoe.
But you know what? You're fighting against this thing, sex trafficking, and yet there's so much of it going on. A lot of it voluntarily, or you may think it's voluntarily, but now she's used to that lifestyle, so she can't go back. Right.
And there's that. I mean, I do see people doing that. I actually know somebody who her close friend was doing that. And the idea of like, oh, well, it started out as I only had to go out with him as like arm candy in order to get paid or get this or get that. And then it turned into something sexual. And then it turned into now he's beating me because I'm not doing things that he's asking me to do. Or I feel like I'm, locked into this and I can't get out of it because now I'm used to this lifestyle, like what you said, or I have this brand new car and he's going to take it all away from me as soon as, I break up with him or I don't talk to him anymore. So yeah, so that is a thing. And I think I don't want to say a lot of, but there are a lot of college students or things like that as well that I think utilize that, knowing that they don't have to pay for college if somebody is helping them out. And unfortunately, like that's how some people would rather live, is know like, oh, I don't have to be in debt or anything, but I just have to do these things for this person.
Sort of a level of prostitution too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a
Right.
level. It's
Right.
prostitution, really.
Right.
Yeah, because on the one hand, that it's kind of sort of promoted, and it's like girls are after it, and then if you're a guy and you have any kind of business sense at all, why wouldn't you gravitate to that? I could take 3 Instagram models, and I can make you some real money. You're making this. Let's meet these people now.
Right. Right.
I'll set it up. I'll make sure nothing bad happens to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Get together. Let's get together. I'll throw an Instagram party.
Right.
Of all the top girls that are on, I'm a moron, but I just came up with a great idea right now.
You just can't have a gender reveal party.
Right.
And upstairs, you're gonna get to have a couple of moments with your favorite Instagram girl. That's how we pay it. And we pay me down here.
Yeah, I see that a lot when I went down to Florida, like in the ritzy areas like Boca Raton and stuff. You see a lot of really hot young girls with like old guys, sugar daddies, And I'm like, wow, how this that, obviously I know how it happened, but
Right. Right.
more prevalent, I guess, in areas that are more affluent.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not going to see the janitor from the high school being a sugar daddy to
Right. Right.
daddy, right?
You never know.
Yeah, that's true. You never know. You never know. So also, I see also on your bio, you deal a lot with families and suicide risk assessments and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's stuff that I've done. I mean, even here, I'm dealing with some of the families and stuff to some of these guys. So sometimes and suicide risk assessments happen a lot. Not necessarily with our pimps, which is interesting. It's more so some of our other sex offenders. So a lot of the time,
I never saw a pimp commit suicide.
No, me neither.
I bet you if you look at occupation, least likely to commit suicide.
Right. Right. So, a lot of I actually worked with kids with disabilities prior to all of this when I was going through college. I did that for about 10 years when I did my undergrad as well as my graduate school and part of high school. And so with that group of people, I worked with their families, I worked with them, then I actually worked with Napa County with their mental health court unit. And so there was some suicide risk going on there. And then here working with families, their significant others, maybe they're having a hard time dealing with, now they're out of prison and, I have this wife and I don't even know what to do because I'm so used to being in prison for the last 16 years.
How do you take someone back? How do you take someone back that's been in prison for 16 years? I mean, seriously, like the whole world's changed. You know what I mean? Like technology, you've changed, you've grown different. And this guy's been in a jail cell for 16 years.
Right.
He's just gonna come home, honey, I'm home.
Right.
Get out.
Yes. And like that's a big thing, is like a lot of, obviously their wives or maybe they were girlfriends at the time when this happened, they're holding on to things because, they've been cheated on and this guy raped some girl or something like that, or there was a molestation that occurred, but they still stayed with them. And so now they're still holding on to all of that. And so having to work through those things of like, either you're going to work through it or you're not. But therapy can either lead to one thing or the other, right? So either you guys are going to decide you don't want to be together or you're going to decide that you want to work it out.
How do you take a sex offender back into your home, say, and you have daughters and stuff? How do you do,
Some of them aren't allowed to. So like if let's say that their victim was their biological child, they're not allowed to go back to that home.
Right.
If it is somebody that was a stranger or a stepchild, but they have biological children, they are allowed to be with their biological children because it wasn't their actual child that was the victim. Now, if they're close to the same age as the victim, there's a lot of close watch on those guys. And I also do a lot of assessments on my end when dealing with that, just because I want to make sure that the children are safe too. And that's obviously number one priority, is to make sure that, when dad's home or mom's home or whatever, that this isn't occurring, and that they are being kept safe through all of it.
Isn't there really no cure for a sex offender?
So surprisingly, for when we think of like sex offenders, I think a lot of people think automatically that it's our guys that are like jumping out of the bushes and grabbing girls as they're jogging by, or our guys that are, you know, have multiple children that they've been with, things like that. A lot of the time what we see is, and this is just where I'm at, these guys may have been labeled an SVP, which is sexually violent predator, but they have one offense. So all their time that they've been there, the reason why they would be considered like a non-high risk offender would be because they only have one victim and there's not a big long criminal history. It also depends on their age of their crime too. But the percentage is like less than 11% that reoffend sexually. So It's pretty low, but for other offenses, it's like 80%, which would be like drugs or theft or, you know, anything else other than sex offenses.
How about how many R. Kellys you see? Like that type of.
You always bring up the showbiz ones.
Right?
No, because the thing is, like, he's not really like a sex trafficker, but he does do all the things sex traffickers do. He doesn't let them communicate with their family or their friends. He keeps them entrapped. You know, they're underage. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they're crossing state to get to him or travel with him at being underage. So there's a lot of similarities between that. So, you know, this is R. Kelly's like the most obvious one that we know. Like, he's not, I don't know if he shares the girls, because that would be another charge.
Right. So he would be more considered in our eyes, probably more of an SVP, which would be someone who's sexually violent predator. So somebody, not necessarily when you think SVP, you're thinking someone that is super violent with them. We don't necessarily mean that. We mean like there's multiple victims. This is something that they're doing all the time. And so we know that that's kind of his history.
But depending on the age, he's also a pedophile.
Right. Exactly.
So let's put the label on him that he deserves. He's a pedophile.
Right. So, and you know, like that falls under like the SVPs and stuff. So like a lot of our guys that we treat and stuff, when it comes to like the pedophilia side of things, we have some that are true pedophiles, but we also have some that they have one victim. And there was a lot of things going on at that time. Not that I'm making any kind of justification for them, but when you think about things in that time of their life and what was going on then, they made a terrible, terrible choice, obviously. And I never say that you had an accident or you did, you know, this was accidental, because it's not accidental, right? This was a choice you made that you planned out. And so when we think of people that are more of SVPs, those are our people that are like in our Atascadero hospitals or things like that. Those are people that we know once they're let out, sometimes more often than not, they're going to go and find someone else again. But a lot of our guys, it tends to be like a family member, which we know is very high percentage of people when they do have a sex offense, that it's someone that they know. Right. So it tends to be like daughters, granddaughters, grandsons, you know, whatever, cousins, nephews, things like that, that it tends to be more so than just like a random stranger victim. And it tends to be one person at least, so we know about, right?
You ever have anyone show up in a Boy Scout uniform?
No, I think they would be kicked out.
How about a priest? Do you get any clergy?
You know, we do actually. We do.
I would think so. I mean, it's such a prevalent profession to have that happen, you know?
Yes.
But I think, you know, what crazy is, you even hear, like the law, I just read something about California. They were trying to change some of the sexual offense laws in dealing with pedophiles, claiming that, I don't know if it was transvestite or some sexual orientation. They can only have sex with younger people. It's really not the same thing. And I was just like, whoa, you know.
No.
Well, they were talking about gay sex, a man with a young boy, and how somehow if it was the age group was similar to heterosexual sex, it was a lesser crime. But in the gay world, if they were both male, then they were getting the stiffer sentence, which meant even though you're considered like a sexual a predator on that list, you would get an A if it was a woman, but you would get like the maximum, which is like a C or a D or vice versa if it was a boy. So that was the discrepancy that Bill's talking about. That's what they're trying to change. It would still be a pedophilia, but it wouldn't be that same variance on the.
Yeah, well, look, there's people. There was a professor from Rutgers University that wrote this whole article that pedophilia shouldn't be a crime.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's horrendous, and it was a bunch of years ago. Some
Right.
PhD from Rutgers saying that, oh, it's it's.
Yeah, but it's a professor.
What's that?
It's a professor saying that. That's what. Well, you're a professor too, but I'm just saying,
I wouldn't say that.
they couldn't function in like the real world, and so they become professors so they can say this fucking crazy shit, and you can't fire them. They never say it before they get tenure. Once they get tenure, then all of a sudden they start saying crazy shit.
Yeah, I guess. So why did you choose this field?
So kind of like what I talked about earlier. So it's actually interesting. So originally I did not want to take this job. It wasn't necessarily that I was going to be working with pimps or sex traffickers. I didn't even know that at the time. So going into it, I knew I would be working with perpetrators. And so for me, having been through what I had been through, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. But also knowing that, hey, like someone's got to do this work. And also what better person than somebody who's been through it and can actually be able to, empathize on the side of like, this is the stuff that happens to people when you guys decide to make these choices. And, I never used myself as an example or anything, but when we talked about victim empathy, there's that idea of like, these are the things, and it's, it can be triggering for us too, but these are the things that these people once had. So whether it was like, and this is an activity I do with them, maybe they were really comfortable with their grandpa and their mom and their uncle. Now, all of a sudden, they can't be comfortable with any of those people because...
No, I got nervous one day when Mark showed up to our show dressed as a Boy Scout leader.
Right. Yeah, so
and then he wore a priest collar another day. I was like, whoa.
Exactly.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, so it's, just having been through something, that I can relate to them on in that sense, but also understanding that they're still people. People make terrible mistakes, don't get me wrong. And, the idea of being able to kind of hear each of their own backgrounds too, and seeing them as the individuals that they are. For me, it was like being able to do that already helped me to be able to kind of look at it in a different way rather than, oh my God, I got to work with this population that number one is difficult because they're mandated, but also just the idea of working with a population that not many people get to work with and choose not to work with.
I would think most people would be so turned off by that population.
Exactly.
Take me through this group, okay? So I'm showing up for the first time. Do I sign in?
Yep.
I sign in, and there's chairs there and stuff. I grab a chair.
Yeah, so it's a circle in the room. So if you can imagine like a square room, there's 10 chairs, including my own. Everybody sits down and you pass the little sign-in sheet around the room. You sign in your name 2 times for a 3-hour group and 1 time for an 1.5-hour group. And then we do check-ins. So how was your week? How are things going?
1 by 1?
I'm sorry?
1 by 1?
Yes. So everybody gets a chance.
Be like a hog, right? Like, dude, shut the fuck up, bro.
Yes. Most of the time, if I know that the guys they're like that every group, I'm like, all right, you got 30 seconds. I give them a timeline basically to do their check-in because they'll purposely.
The guy, he's like, it's all good. It's all good.
Yep.
It's
yep.
good.
I have those too.
Yeah, huh? And
yeah, or they'll be like, I know that this is the after show, so I'm good to cuss, right?
Yeah.
So they'll be like, fuck this, I don't want to be here. This is bullshit. I'm gonna go to jail. I don't even care anymore. And they walk out. So we have those too.
You're not gonna chase them. Go ahead, leave. Right?
Exactly. No, I'm not chasing them.
Most of them don't bail out once they see you. Oh, that's our instructor. I'll stick around for a minute.
Yeah, and some of them will make inappropriate comments. So I'm
like, they ever say, Bree, I gotta go, man. Just sign me in, all right?
Yeah, exactly. That too. Or they sign in for both halves for the 3-hour group.
Be up on that attendance sheet.
So, do you you do a lecture after that, and then you break it down into talking to individuals, or do you just go into like everybody gets a moment?
So typically, the 3-hour groups, as you can imagine, is a really long time. So we do our check-ins. I do about a 15-minute break after that, and then we do our lecture of everything.
And then another 15-minute break. We go to lunch.
Right. So we go into like the last probably hour and 45 or so. So it takes a little bit, probably about an hour to do check-ins and stuff for everybody. I actually do one with them as well, just to make myself a part of the group so they always feel like, I have something to add with them.
Wait a minute, you tell them what you did on your summer vacation too?
No,
I did on my summer vacation.
right.
Was that the beach with my children? Come on.
Exactly. No, so we normally do like our little check-ins like that, and then do the break, and then we come back and I choose a topic that we're talking about for the day. Normally that topic lasts for a few weeks. So we might be talking about change, right? So the different types of change, what stages are you guys in, things like that. And we talk about that. And then we'll do an activity.
I really do want to change.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
It's interesting because you don't want to share too much. It's interesting what you can even share.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to let anybody know where you live or
Right.
your family or anything like that, because you don't know who these people are. I mean, 99% of them will be fine, but then you get that one that,
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
like the correction officers, they always tell you they don't wear a wedding ring. They don't show anything that connects them to the outside world because they don't want the prisoners to have anything to use against them.
Right. Right.
That could be similar for, like you don't go, oh, I was at Walmart. I really had a,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah, so like the biggest piece, I mean, obviously all my clients knew I was pregnant through all my pregnancy. I was there from day one to the very last day.
Right.
And, a lot of them were asking like, is your baby okay? As soon as I came back, things like that. Obviously I'm like, yes, he's doing good. And then just leave it at that type of thing.
Right.
But there's stuff like that where it's like, it's hard to keep that from them. I'm like, I just ate some really good burritos this week, like that's my
They
food,
handing you
baby.
cards for the baby. This is the present for the baby.
Right. So
But in your field, an MSW, down the road, if you want to make money, the way to make money is to become a therapist, right?
So I've already submitted all my stuff to get licensed. I just have to take the exam, and I'm waiting for them to send that back to me.
So
saying,
you're going for the bucks. You're going for the big bucks and going away from.
social workers don't make that much money.
I don't blame you. I'd go for the bucks too.
Right.
But then what are you going to do? Family counseling?
No, so I would continue doing this. I honestly don't really like working with kids. I think working with the families is the hardest part. I like the kids. I don't like the families. I think that sometimes you do a lot of work with the kids and then they go home to this environment again, and it's just this constant like cycle. And it's really, really hard to work with families that don't necessarily, nobody wants to be told how to parent, right?
Right.
So I actually prefer working with adults, although a lot of my guys are a bunch of big babies. But, I don't have to deal with their parents. So.
Well, God bless
Them
them.
to their parents, but their parents is the state.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Now you work for the state.
You're in the fields, man. You're fighting sex traffickers, man. God bless you, man.
Thank you.
Brianna, but you work for the state, right?
No, so I am actually, I was contracted with the state through the agency I was working with before. So basically what happens is like there's different sex offender treatment centers that have to get contracted through the state. That's what it was. Ideally, I would love to get in with the state eventually. And I think that as we know, sex trafficking is getting bigger and bigger, although it's been around a long time. I think that there might be some opportunity at some point soon. Even with me getting in law enforcement recently has been a really good thing for me too.
Well, why would just because if you went with the state, you get a pension and the pay would be better? Is that why?
Yeah, and I just feel like there's a lot of room there. Like versus what I was doing before, it just kind of is like there's only certain growth there, and if the contract is lost, the contract is lost. Like there's no, So I feel like if there's more of a permanent position, and I really love working with law enforcement too, and I think that's a good dynamic to have, having both sides of it, being able to work together to work with these guys, because you don't always have that. You can have someone who comes in that actually is able to speak to them on a different level, and I think that's a big thing that we have is when I talk to some of our law enforcement officers, it's like, I come in with my badge, I come in with all these different things, and of course they're not going to talk to me, and so having someone come in that's more of like a neutral party sometimes can be a little more helpful. Also, just the training side of stuff I really love, which is what I had started doing just last month. And I'm really enjoying that too, because I think that that's needed as well, just to kind of get more of background of these guys and different things that we work on with them. You know.
I hope you don't mind. I'm going to pimp you out right now. I see a great book in you. And I see a YouTube channel with tutorials for parents and a podcast that's killer.
That's right.
I'm telling you, you got it in you. It's a really interesting topic. And as a parent, I'm telling you right now, I would love to know from somebody who knows what I can look out for my kids, my daughter. Like, how can I make sure that the telltale signs, because so many parents are oblivious. I grew up in the city, so I knew, but the boy who's a little bit too friendly, you know what I'm saying? You could even have him over your house.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? You know, she's got a crush on him, but he's supposedly in a gang and stuff like that. All that stuff is useful, and you have all that knowledge. I'm telling you right now, you can make a buck, man.
You got to be entrepreneurial, though. You know?
I want to be part. I want to be part of it.
Thank you.
The social worker and the Boy Scout leader.
Right, exactly.
Listen, you made it. You hung out with us for an hour. God bless you. I don't know how you did it. Most people
Me neither. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you were great. You're very easy to talk to.
Thanks.
Bear with us while we plug our Patreon,
Yeah.
and then we'll nice send off.
You want me to plug it or you?
Yeah, we'll plug the Patreon, and then we'll give her a nice send off, and go ahead, you can plug it.
Okay. Mark and I, we're on a site called Patreon, www.patreon.com/policeoffthecuff. And basically what that is we give our Patreon customers extra episodes and more content because we want your money. Because by giving this out there for free doesn't make us any coin, you know? And we're too old to now go into to go work for the state. We already did work for the state. They're paying us till we die, you know? That's why, you know, some people have those DNRs, do not resuscitate, in their will. But I have a pension, so I have a DR, and that stands for do resuscitate. Keep me alive even if I'm 60 fucking pounds. Because my family needs that pension. But we also need your dollars on our Patreon. And we're actually picking up. We've had it for a month. We got 28 Patreon customers so far. We had a new one today.
And yeah, it's I'm putting up episodes one-on-one with Mark DeMeo, special interviews, and Bill's got his podcast that he does about true crime, and it's all good stuff, man. Great content. There's more coming. We have a tribute that I'm putting together to an officer that we all loved here in New York City, a famous detective, and check it out. It's Police Off the Cuff on Patreon at patreon.com. And for our guest who came through all the way from California tonight.
It was a long flight.
She raced home to get home in time.
Thanks to my two lovely sugar daddies right here.
That's right. Your sugar daddy takes care of you. I hope you didn't blow any of those those red light cameras. They'll send you the summonses in the mail. I was just out on Long Island over the weekend, and I couldn't believe I was on this road called Old Country Road. Every third light had a camera because I had Waze on, and it's saying red light camera coming up. Right? I was like, what is this? It's so crazy. All they're doing is trying to get paid. The government's trying to get paid at every damn junction. You know?
Yeah.
These pimps, the politicians should have an ankle bracelet on, and they should come see you once a week, and you should say, okay, how was your week?
Hey, that's not the first time I've heard that, by the way.
Hey,
The guys will say that.
The red light cameras, or about the politicians wearing ankle bracelets?
The politicians wearing ankle monitors.
hey, Bree, if somebody wanted to hire you for a lecture or a speaker, where can they find you?
They can email me at Brianna. It's BRIANA .O'Daniel ODANIEL @gmail.com.
And you're also on LinkedIn too, right?
I am under Brianna O'Daniel.
That's where I found her.
Yes.
I was trolling LinkedIn like a pimp.
Well, on that note, that's a great way to know. Thanks to our fans for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Mark DeMeo. Had a great time with you. Bill, any parting words?
Really, thank you so much for being a guest. You were great.
Thank you.
And you're prettier on Zoom than you are on LinkedIn.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm like, is the lighting good? Am I good?
The lighting was perfect.
Thank you so much, Brianna.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Good night now.